Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Our residential luchador will soon come to Genshin Impact in the least expected form, Varesa. We'll explore her unique movement capabilities as well as how utterly fantastic, or not, she is in 10 different teams at Constellation Zero to see if she's a good choice for your account. Varesa's design is clearly inspired by Lucha Libre, a legendary form of masked wrestling. In Varesa's case, she alternates between her usual clumsy self to a confident masked luchador. Varesa is one of the most amusing and unique characters in all of Genshin Impact.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
While being classified as a medium-height female model, believe it or not, Hoyoverse took her model and upgraded it to a moodle with utterly crazy proportions.
Stop it. Get some help.
Not only does she have a completely unique 3D model, Hoyoverse even gave her custom physics, starting with her movement. Varesa is able to hoof it much faster than her medium-heighted counterparts, able to stampede across the bridge in just 9.9 seconds in comparison to Ganyu taking 11.5 seconds. This next high-stakes race left me in tears. While her base running speed is even faster than tall male models, she runs out of stamina way faster, in just 15 seconds compared to Zhongli's 20 seconds. This fits pretty darn well with her theme of a large appetite and her beefed up proportions. This is actually because of her exploration passive, which increases her run speed and stamina consumption. But let's address the real cow in the room. Why is she, a cow, eating burgers all the time? Disturbing details aside, let's see who is faster, the prodigious masked disciple or her teacher, Xianyun. Well, sadly for Xianyun, Varesa isn't just all beef and no speed. With her elemental skill, she utterly dominated Xianyun in crossing this bridge in just 6.6 seconds, compared to Xianyun's elemental skill taking 9.75 seconds. So, Varesa actually has 2 charges of her elemental skill, which she can even use in rapid succession to basically fill up her Night Soul bar, where she runs really fast. Look how fast she goes. And because she has those 2 charges, she is indeed able to kind of alternate between using them as well as doing this finishing dash jump, which gives her a lot of extra distance. And no joke, she even has the Sonic the Hedgehog leg animation, which you absolutely love to see. Anyway, while all this might look impressive, let's see how she does against the current top dogs of the ground speed meta. Yes, she is actually competitive to Mavuika for ground beef speed and is noticeably faster than the OG sprinter in Genshin Impact, Xilonen, making her anything but a cow potato. Now, a funny little detail about Varesa's running is that she doesn't have as great of turning speed. While she's in her bull rush mode, we can see that the angle of curvature for which she turns. Now, another interesting thing about her exploration capabilities is that her charge attack actually bounces her up high in the air, and just like that, you're able to grab a decent amount of collectibles that normally you might actually have some trouble with. And finally, Varesa can actually run on water, very briefly, briefly being the key word there. And also, needless to say, in Natlan, she can run for an extended amount of time, making you feel like you're LARPing as a certain blue blur in the Emerald Hill Zone. Anyway, you guys didn't click on this video to see how fast she can hoof it. You clicked on this video to see if she can lay the smackdown on her enemies. Well, Varesa's basic attacks are stubby and funny looking. But what happens when she gets serious and enters the Lucha Libre ring? Let us turn up the heat with everyone's favorite volunteer, the coldest salad tosser in town. You know him, you love him, it's the Cryo Regis Vine. Yeah, her raw damage is anything but undercooked, and is quite well done if you ask me. And needless to say, the Registine tapped out in no time against the Bovine. Alright, these milk puns have gone way past their expiration date, so I'm just gonna talk like an actual human being and moving forward. God damn it! Now, Varesa's kit is actually quite complicated on paper and initially very confusing, but fortunately in practice she ends up being quite easy to use. So starting off, she actually does have this really awesome looking burst where she does this animation. I absolutely love the animation, but unfortunately you won't really be using that specific burst very much because Varesa actually has two elemental bursts. Now she has this other burst, which I'm just gonna be calling her mini burst, where she can kind of do this additional little plunge attack. And the way that she does this is by switching back and forth between her masked Lucha Libre form as well as just kind of her regular clumsy self. And the way that she switches between her two forms is by doing this combo, which is basically just elemental skill, a free charge attack, into a plunge attack which fills up her Night Soul points. Then the next one will cause her to enter Fiery Passion state, where she can use that additional free plunge attack. So it's basically E click click, E click click, and then Q. Varesa is an Electro Plunge main DPS, and as such, we need to build some teams that bring out her potential. Starting with an overloaded, free-to-play friendly $2 stake team. Thanks to the 2-note buff from the Widsith, as well as all the buffs from Bennett, Jansan, and Chevreuse, Varesa is able to hit for over 200,000 damage for some of her plunge attacks. Granted, Bennett does cause some issues for Varesa's mobility against stationary enemies and bosses, but Varesa does some very impressive damage already with this free-to-play friendly $2 stake team.
This is gonna be a delicious steak.
Let's upgrade to the Wagyu stake team.
Finally, some good food.
With Mavuika and an upgraded Chevreuse. This will likely be one of Varesa's strongest teams on her release, with Mavuika capable of both meaningfully contributing damage as well as buffing Varesa's damage. This also frees Varesa from the shackles of Circle Impact and allows her to actually utilize her high mobility to chase down other highly mobile enemies. Of course, there are other plunge archetype teams, like with this Zookeeper team. Jansan being the Zookeeper and the rest of them being literal animals fulfills this classic plunge archetype team. Xianyun is able to provide the largest individual plunge numbers, at least from what I found so far, allowing Varesa to reach an impressive 283,596 damage plunge attack. This team also funnily has 3 healers, ensuring that Varesa is very full and well fed and healthy. Now, what if you don't have Chevreuse and you don't have Xianyun, and you're basically a 1.0 version player pulling for Varesa? Introducing the Genshin Boomer team. Yet another team with Circle Impact issues with Bennett, but against enemies that don't move much, it's great. We can see Varesa is able to utilize 1.0 characters like Bennett and Sucrose extremely well. She's still able to output a ton of damage, assuming you didn't get super unlucky and not get Jansan. Now we're reaching some of Varesa's less obvious teams, with the first one being Double Geo, the Rocky Bull Ride team. While Varesa's numbers certainly aren't as high as with the previous teams, having Double Geo can make certain enemies that dislike Geo damage much easier to deal with. Xilonen is also great for this, as she happens to buff both Geo and Electro damage, and bonus points if you have Chiori's Constellation 1, which would actually allow her to have 2 dolls on the field instead of just 1. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't run Varesa with other powerful cores like the classic Furina plus healer core. While Varesa doesn't benefit much from, for example, Quicken or Hyper Bloom due to her scaling much better off of attack than Elemental Mastery, they still do contribute a non-negligible amount of damage, and of course, Furina's bonus damage buff and her personal damage is always welcome. While I certainly don't think this is one of Varesa's best teams, it's perfectly functional, and if you happen to have these characters to allocate, like for example Imaginarium Theater, you won't be disappointed by her performance. Of course, Baizu can be substituted for many healers such as Xianyun, Xilonen, and many others. I want to quickly commentate about this looking cool team, which is where you can actually incorporate Varesa's 70 cost elemental burst at the beginning of the rotation. Now, sadly enough, it doesn't even increase her damage output by doing this, and it puts a lot more energy constraints on her, but by funneling Iansan's energy as well as Fischl being an incredible battery, this actually does allow her to do normal rotations with her elemental burst first. So this way you can definitely look very cool, and it's very fitting for when Fischl's on your team, because Fischl, that is definitely something that she would care about as well. Now, I've pretty much shown you everything I can in this early access video. So let's go through Varesa's pros and cons and my advice on whether or not you should pull for her. As we can see, Varesa is a character with high multipliers and who outputs a ton of plunge damage. Her base multipliers are very high, which Electro characters either need very fast Electro application or very high base damage, and Varesa definitely falls in the latter category of having high multipliers. The reason for Electro characters with low Electro application needing these high base multipliers is because they don't have access to amplifying reactions like Melt or Vaporize, and instead need to rely on just brutally beating down their enemies, which Varesa definitely does. Her playstyle at first is a bit unintuitive, but after some practice and knowing the combo string, which you'll just keep repeating, she becomes reasonably easy to use, albeit still harder than most Genshin characters. I personally think some devs from the Zenless Zone Zero side have been contributing to recent Genshin characters, both from a kit perspective and a design perspective. She also has a great and accessible free-to-play friendly team via Overloaded, and fortunately with proper teammates, Varesa is able to escape the shackles of Circle Impact. But if Bennett is your best option, which might be the case depending on what characters you have, she will have to deal with Circle Impact, which is a bit clunky given her ridiculous mobility and enemies being mobile as well. Also, she has perfect synergy with Yansan, who is a 4-star character on Varesa's banner, who wants a teammate with high mobility, and well, Varesa has high mobility. And Yansan is looking to be one of the most meta-defining 4-star characters since, honestly, Bennett, as she provides a ton of different buffs at the cost of needing a highly mobile on-field character, which, needless to say, Varesa has no issues with. Yansan also being on Varesa's banner is just the cherry on top, as hopefully you'll get a few copies of her on your journey to potentially getting Varesa as well. And as we get more copies of Yansan over time, Varesa will only get stronger. Granted, if you are super unlucky while pulling for Varesa and don't get Yansan, that is going to be a bit of a problem, as you might be cursed with Bennett's Circle Impact. Another small downside for her is that she struggles to utilize characters like Xingqiu and Yulan, who require normal attacks to activate their abilities, as Varesa can't really weave many of those normal attacks into rotation. So this is a pretty minor drawback, as those aren't really characters that you'd want to use with her anyway. Now, as for how strong I think she is, I think she's a very solid and definitely an above average DPS character who's fun and fast paced, but with a bit of admittingly funny and intentional jank built in, since she is a plunge DPS character with both unique physics and mechanics. While I don't think she sets any new records for DPS, overall she feels like the newest best Electro DPS in town. And if that's something you need and you like what you see, then Varesa is a solid choice for your account. Also, she is so freaking fast in the overworld that it honestly feels a bit insane. That, combined with her poor turn speed, leads to some very funny feeling interactions during exploration. Anyway, let me know what you think about Varesa down in the comments below. As usual, I'll have some additional content, likely a full guide on her release day, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.